A warm welcome to you all to the endowed Michael M.E. Johns, M.D. Lecture on Healthcare Policy, which is sponsored by the Department of Otolaryngology, Head and Neck Surgery, jointly with the School of Medicine. It's a real privilege for us to recognize Dr. Johns, who is here today. Dr. Johns served as the director of the Department of Otolaryngology, Head and Neck Surgery from 1984 to 1990. When he arrived at Johns Hopkins, the department was essentially in its infancy still, and under his leadership, this department was transformed. The faculty was expanded, academic leaders and subspecialties were recruited, and this led to the formation of subspecialty divisions within the department. Through these new divisions, the clinical services and practices were expanded as well. In collaboration with the Departments of Biomedical Engineering and Neuroscience, he helped establish the Center for Hearing Services in 1985. This led to the recruitment of new scientists, and this created opportunities for clinicians, creating a lasting legacy for Hopkins with endowed chairs, grants, and other multidisciplinary efforts that attracted NIH support and propelled the department to become #1 in the country for research funding. Training programs were also expanded, and the department competed successfully for an NIH training grant, which continues to fund trainee research today. Many of the graduates of this program are leaders around the country in academic medicine. During the last 4 years of his term as director of the department, Dr. Johns served simultaneously as the Associate Dean for Clinical Affairs in the Hopkins School of Medicine. During that time, his efforts led to the construction of the Johns Hopkins Outpatient Center, which is adjacent, which is soon to be renamed after Dr. Levy Watkins. Dr. Johns was then appointed to become Dean of the School of Medicine in 1991. In that role, he helped elevate the School of Medicine to prominence in research and helped develop innovative technology transfer programs. He served as dean until 1996 when he moved to Emory, where he became dean of the School of Medicine, executive vice president of the Health Sciences Center until 2007, and then served as the chancellor for the entire Emory system until 2012. Dr. Johns is still with Emory, where he is executive vice president for Health Affairs Emeritus and president, CEO, and chairman of the board emeritus for Emory Healthcare. It is a joy to have Dr. Johns here today. His association with Hopkins is nothing short of transformative. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to see you all here today. Chris, thank you for that introduction. And Mike, thank you for being here and for the legacy you've left to us. Very, very important. Thank you so much. Well, again, welcome to the 2023 version of the Michael Johns Lecture in Healthcare Policy. And our most distinguished guest today, Mr. Ken Kaufman. Ken, it's wonderful to have you with us today. Ken, as many of you might know, is the founder and managing director of, and chair of Kaufman Hall, one of the world's leading healthcare and management consulting firms. Since 1976, Ken has provided organizational healthcare consulting really to a large swath of the organizations in the country around strategy, finance, financial and capital planning, mergers, acquisitions, we were just talking about some of that recently, and partnerships. And as I noted, his clients have included both community hospitals, large academic centers, large health systems across the country. Ken is recognized as a leading authority on healthcare change, and Ken has given hundreds of presentations to organizations of various sizes, small hospitals again, large organizations, government groups, all in a way to try to help guide their work through the morass that is healthcare today. Ken has authored or co-authored 7 books, including his recent one, which I just love the name, Fast and Furious, Observations on Healthcare's Transformation and Focus on Finance. That could be a Hollywood movie, I think, Ken. There's probably too much blood and gore in that for... To get an R rating, it's probably higher than that. Ken is the recipient, importantly, of the 2019 Richard L. Clark Board of Directors Award from the Healthcare Financial Management Association for his lifetime contributions to healthcare. And I think notably, Ken's the only consultant who ever has received this award. So congratulations on that, Ken. Before Ken went on to receive his MBA from the University of Chicago in healthcare management, we were just recently talking about that as well, Ken had a career as a candle maker in Maine. So Ken, I guess you've been enlightened since an old age or something like that. Yeah. Thank you, Julia, thank you. I'm here all weekend, by the way, just to letting you know that. But Ken, it's a real honor and pleasure for those of us who have followed from a distance what you've done, your influence in our industry, and the importance you and your firm will continue to have. So Ken, with all of that, welcome to you, please.
Well, it's a tremendous honor to be here. Just an incredible honor, and for Dr. Johns and an extraordinarily distinguished career. And thank you very much for that really kind introduction. I need to find out who tipped you off on the candle making thing, so I can kill them. We should have a picture of me in my candle making days, but. Why don't you just try to imagine that there was hair, and it was all the way down to here, and it wasn't in Maine. It was on Cape Cod in Wellfleet. So, any of you who, it's a wonderful place. So great. I'm really delighted to do this. I'm going to talk for a while, and then I'm going to take some questions. I really encourage you on the question part because that's my favorite part of the presentations. I've done close to 600 presentations across my career, and as Dr. DeWeese said, in every type and stripe, and I learned so much from the questions in terms of what people are thinking and how they're thinking about the problems, and so if you'll be thinking about that, I would love to have 10 to 15 minutes at the end to do that. So the hardest thing about this talk, the hardest thing about this talk is to figure out how to get it started, because here we are in this probably the greatest academic medical center in the history of the world. So I feel like, it should be technical, it should be scientific, it should be theoretical. But the truth of the matter is, for hospitals and health systems in America right now, things suck. So that's as technical and scientific as I can get right now. It's really bad out there, and it's really bad both financially, which everybody knows. But also, and something we might talk about a little bit, it's really bad clinically as well. The financial condition of the industry can't help but get to the point where it begins to affect the way patients are cared for and what hospitals and health systems are actually able to do and how quickly they're able to do it and how effectively they're able to do it. That's something that doesn't get talked about very much, but I do have a slide in here where we'll talk a little bit about some of the problems that have developed post-COVID in terms of actually delivering care in many metropolitan areas. So what I tell everybody is one of the really great things about my job is that I get to talk with health system CEOs around the country on a regular basis. And many of the CEOs I talk to are some of the most prominent hospital CEOs in America. And everybody has the same story right now, and that is how hard it is to run their organization. And what they're saying is that, before COVID, when there was a downturn, they knew which buttons to push and which levers to pull. And as soon as they pushed those buttons and pulled those levers, the organization responded. But what's happened now since the COVID situation and coming out into 2022 is that everybody's pushing those same buttons and they're pulling those same levers, but they're not getting the appropriate results. And in a minute, I'll show you a slide to show you how poorly those results actually are across the country. Now, I've always had I do have a University of Chicago background, both undergraduate and also my MBA. And so I think everybody knows that at Chicago we need to find theoretical constructs to explain something. And if you can't do that, then you don't really get an in-depth understanding of what the issues are and how do you approach this? How do you approach this problem in terms of what's happening to healthcare on a post-COVID basis, and what direction are we going to go, and how are we going to determine what those directions are? So the construct that I've selected for you today is the sociological construct, the theoretical position called wicked problems. And some of you may be familiar with this. So the concept of wicked problems was developed in 1973 by two social scientists, Horst Riddle and Melvin Weber. And what they postulated that was interesting about the wicked problem concept is that wicked problems have no single correct solution, unlike a math problem or perhaps a science problem. That wicked problems in our society, you can just never figure out what the exact solution is. And this is confounding for hospital executives right now, because what people would really like to have is sort of the magic answer. When I go around, the question that I get is, tell me the one thing that I can do to make our hospital more effective right now. And of course, the answer is there is no one thing you can do. The issue is it's probably 50 things or 70 things. It's death by 1,000 cuts. It's not a single nuclear explosion. And so that's very disconcerting to the practitioners out in the hospital world. A wicked problem also has a solution that improves one aspect of the wicked problem, but it usually makes another aspect of the problem worse. And the example that Riddle and Weber gave is that poverty is a common example of the wicked problem. We've been trying to solve poverty in an organized way since the Great Society in 1965, and to some extent we've made progress, but in other areas we come in with one particular answer and approach, and it just makes something else worse. And so you can certainly, everybody's aware of how people feel about that. So wicked problems have 5 characteristics to ground you in this discussion. They are very hard to define. It's hard to know when they are solved, which is a really big issue, especially from a governance perspective. Boards of directors, they want to know that, here's the problem, let's talk about the problem. Now, Mr. CEO or Mrs. CEO, come back and tell me that it's solved. But when you're dealing with wicked problems, you don't really know when it's solved. Potential solutions are not right or wrong, they're only better or worse. There is no end to the number of solutions or approaches to a wicked problem, which is really difficult from a managerial and administrative perspective. And there's no way to test the solution to a wicked problem. Once you implement those solutions, they're not easily reversible, and those solutions can affect many people in profound and unanticipated ways. And that's what makes this whole construct so difficult to work with, and really gives you a point of view of how difficult managing our hospital community in America is right now. So the wicked problem of healthcare. Healthcare has long been one of our nation's critical wicked problems. This is nothing new. It's sort of worse coming out of COVID, but it's not new. The broad and persistent effects of COVID have made those problems more numerous, more complex, and more pressing. Anybody will tell you that. And like all wicked problems, the wicked problems of healthcare can be defined in many different ways and from many different perspectives. And we're seeing that right now big time. And I'll talk about the media impact on the operation of hospitals in just a second with another slide. So what I'd like to do then is run you through a few of what I think are the more consequential wicked problems currently confronting America's healthcare systems, including any of those that you might be connected with, or, of course, Hopkins itself. I just want, before I go through this, I just want to indicate to you that these are certainly not all of the wicked problems. They're the ones that seem most important and most consequential to me right now. So problem number one, and this isn't going to surprise anybody in the audience, is money. In 2022, 54% of hospitals lost money from operations in the United States, with expenses, particularly labor expenses, growing faster than revenues. And I'm going to show you another slide in a minute to show you how difficult that all was. At the same time, the payers, the Blue Crosses of the world, the Anthems of the world, the United Healthcare of the world, reported 2022 profits in the billions of dollars. And they've been slow in paying or have refused to pay for services, and further are declining to shoulder their share of increases in labor and other inflation market-driven costs. I've had a number of CEOs tell me that they've gone to their main payer and said, we have a huge labor problem, and that labor problem is not improving, and it's not going to improve anytime soon, and you should pay your fair share of those increases in labor costs. And to my knowledge, all of the payers to this point in time have said not interested. Evidently, that's your problem. I guess you're going to figure out how to deal with it. And so this leads me to conclude that the relationship between the payers and the health delivery system is probably at an all-time low right now. And you know, you've certainly seen the fight over the denials that is going forward, and the way that that the payers are dealing with the denial question is a huge, huge problem for many hospitals across the United States. So this is kind of the slide of all slides. This is the slide that I show in every one of my talks, no matter, you know, what the group is. So you can see in 2021, we had the CARES money. And you can see that with the CARES money, that hospitals had very consequential margins during the fiscal year of 2021. And then you can see that something rather strange and bizarre happened, that in January of 22, hospitals on a median basis across the United States lost 3.4% from operations. So this is taken from our database, which is 900 hospitals. We get this information on a monthly basis, which we think makes our analysis and flash report much more accurate than many of the other databases around. So nobody can really, this chart doesn't make any sense. What should have happened was that this change in operating results should have occurred in a more, you know, sort of like, it's sort of, you know, kind of, we went into 22 and maybe it was, we had 1% or 2% margins because the CARES money went away, and then it slid off, and then it would sort of begin to slide back. That would be your typical financial curve that you would see in hospitals historically. Instead, the financial condition of the hospitals just fell off the cliff. So something was being hidden and masked here by the COVID pandemic, and then you can see what happened. Now, if you look at 2022 there, those are very strange numbers, because usually in the past, when hospitals would note, you know, what happened in January and February, they would immediately react. They would begin to cut costs. There would be layoffs. Those layoffs in hospitals are usually surreptitious. They're not, you know, the kind of announced layoffs that you see coming from, you know, Meta or any of the tech firms across the country. But so what you can see here is it's gotten better, but it hasn't, it's improved, I should say, but it hasn't gotten better. We've gotten a whole year in 2022 with results like of losses on a monthly basis, with a small gain in December of 2022, but immediately in 2023, which I don't have these numbers to show you right here, we went back into a loss position. And then I want to give you the results of the April flash report, which we just brought out 2 days ago. And that is that in April of this year, 2023, Hospitals experienced increases in bad debt and charity care in April. And in addition, there were decreased patient volumes between March and April of 2023, which is very unexpected and very concerning. And our only conclusion from that, and I think this is an important policy perspective. You remember that the public health emergency was ended. And when the public health emergency ended, the dispensation for Medicaid patients went away. And a lot of Medicaid patients who were on the rolls were disenrolled by the fact that the PHE was ended. And we believe that we're seeing already in April the effects of that disenrollment of the Medicaid patients by the relationship of bad debt going up, charity care going up, and utilization going down. And this is really, I just want to say, the last thing that American hospitals need right now to try to deal with. So this is quite a chart. So this is between 22 and 21 and 22 and 2019. And you can see something happened here that, as far as we're concerned, has never happened in any time that we can identify across the hospital industry, that inpatient revenue between 21 and 22 on a macro median level across all American hospitals went up 0%. There was no increase in revenue from an inpatient side. Outpatient revenue went up 8%, but net operating revenue went up only 2%. And then you can see on an expenses basis, total expense went up 7%, labor expense went up 9%, and in many areas of the country it went up more than that because hospitals had to hire contract labor in order to keep important services open. And then in order to hire back technical assistance, they had to pay up to get that technical assistance. So there's no comparison between, for instance, what nursing wages look like right now and what they looked like in 2018. And then if you look then between 2019 and 2022, overall revenue, net operating revenue, went up 15% during those 4 years, but total labor expense went up 24%. And so this is what I call now the broken relationship between revenue and expense in the hospital industry going forward. And there doesn't really seem to be any particular opportunity to fix this in the short term, and maybe no opportunity to fix this in the long term. What people are really worried about is that this revenue and expense relationship, where we usually were able to push buttons and create cross-subsidies, now in many hospitals we're not able to do that anymore, and therefore this is what is delivering the very poor financial results that I showed you on the previous page. So wicked problem number 2, after money, is labor, physicians, and the broken relationship between supply and demand in the national healthcare delivery system. So we're talking about the big macroeconomic issues. We're talking about supply and demand, and we're talking about money. And when you're messed up in those particular areas, you have a very significant management issue. So the labor pool is stressed and distressed during COVID, and it continues to be insufficient to deliver many necessary services. Now, hospitals try to keep this, for the most part, hospitals don't want to issue press releases on this stuff, but the truth of the matter is if you talk to the people who are really running, they will tell you that there are services that they are not offering anymore. Or if they are offering those services, they're not offering them in the same scope and depth that they were offering them before, because A, they can't afford to, and B, they can't find the help to actually offer those services. And clinician shortages in many specialties are causing protracted delays in patient abilities to secure necessary appointments, which in turn is delaying necessary diagnosis and treatment and making the financial condition of many American hospitals even worse than it is just from a revenue and expense perspective. I do these informal surveys, and trust me, these are not Gallup surveys. Whenever I talk to people around the country, which I do every day and every week, I ask them questions. And one of my recent surveys has been, in your community, how long is the wait now for a colonoscopy? And the general answer I've gotten from most metropolitan areas across the United States is 5 months. And that is like, that's just like the tip of the iceberg for other discussions and other situations you can talk about. I'll tell you a little story. I don't know when it was. It must have been about a year ago. My wife had to wait. She made an appointment for a colonoscopy. She didn't have any problems. She was willing to wait. She waited 5 months for that appointment. And then, you'll enjoy this story. And then at the dinner, 2 days before she was to get her colonoscopy, we're at the dinner table, and she said, oh, by the way, I had lunch with so-and-so, and she called me today, and she said she tested positive for COVID. And I've got this colonoscopy appointment coming up. And this was still, we were still in the mask and the whole 9 yards stuff. And so she said, what should I do? And so now I'll tell you a lot about me, and please don't feel badly. I said, if I were you, I would go. And she said, so she took that in, but she didn't, she said, well, I'll think about it. So then I saw her at the dinner table the next night, and I said, what do you do about your colonoscopy? She said, I called and told the tech who answered the phone that I'd been exposed to COVID, and what would they prefer that I do? And they say, we prefer that you would not come. And then the next thing that happened was exactly what I knew was going to happen. She said, well, then I need to reschedule. And the tech said, yeah, okay, first appointment's November 2nd. And so it was a 5-month wait to get the appointment. She did the right thing and did not go in for the appointment, and then had to wait 5 months for the next appointment. This is, honest to goodness, this is actually what the American health system looks like right now. Not all over, in every place, in every corner. I was talking to a CEO who runs a very important children's hospital in America, and I was telling him about these stories, and I said, do you have the same problem on the pediatric side? And he said, well, I'll give you two answers to that. The first answer is when kids call and it's pediatric cancer, we figure out how to get them in. We do not make them wait. We have figured out how to do that. However, if your child needs a developmental workup, been diagnosed with a pediatrician and told to get a developmental workup, you will wait 18 months to get that developmental workup. Now, can you imagine a family? So I'm just telling you, it's kind of the hidden little thing. Nobody really wants to talk about it, but it's really, that's what it really looks like out there. So there's no way that you can just have the financial downturn post-COVID in the hospital community. That is absolutely already leading to a clinical downturn in the community as well. So problem number 3 is market and public health resources. So because of the lack of space in post-acute settings, thousands of patients are stuck today in hospitals who should not be there, damaging both clinical and financial results. I did a talk for the Minnesota Hospital Association. When I got there, the president of the Minnesota Hospital Association said, I got to tell you something. I said, okay, tell me. He said, we did a little survey the other day. We called every hospital in the state of Minnesota, and we asked them, how many patients are in your hospital that shouldn't be there? And the total answer across all Minnesota hospitals was 2,000. So you can imagine 2,000 patients every day in Minnesota hospitals who shouldn't be there, and you can imagine the cost, but you can also imagine the consequence to the financial results of those hospitals, having all of those patients in the hospital that they can't get out, that they eventually get to a point that they also can't be paid for. And then secondly, hospitals are increasingly expected to operate public health programs. I think everybody in this room is totally aware that during COVID, our public health system in this United States was revealed for what it is, not very good, and not up to the kind of pandemic that we had. And still, right now, not up to another pandemic should we have that. So hospitals across the country had to step up to that. Who did the testing? Who organized the mass inoculations and vaccinations? Who did all of that work? Who brought that money forward? It was the Hospitals of America who stepped up to do that. And when they recognized how poorly their public health programs were in taking it, they put even more effort into that. And so now hospitals are not only stuck with declining financial results, but they also now not only are providing care in their normal clinical sense, but they're also having to take on public health responsibilities in their communities. So shortages are creating backlogs in patients in desperate need of hospital beds. Hospital occupancy rates are now hovering around 80% across the country, compared with 64% pre-pandemic. And as of March, the average length of stay is up 5% compared with pre-pandemic levels. And of course, this is really strange because in general, over the last 25 or 30 years, average length of stay has been going down and occupancy has been going down as well. So this average length of stay is due to staff shortages, both within hospitals that the work can't get done because there's not enough staff there, problems in post-acute settings, but also a very strange pivoting from surgical to medical admissions. So I have not asked what your situation is, but in many of my clients around the country, their surgical admissions are down, their medical admissions are up. Their medical admissions have much longer average length of stay and are much more problematic from a management perspective. So what we're doing here is we're just doing this line of march where we're showing you the different kinds of issues. And in every hospital across the country, management now has to figure out how to solve these problems. And you can see how they are wicked problems because you can solve one problem and just make another problem worse and not really know what direction to go in. Wicked problem number 4, my favorite, regulation. We could stay here for another 2 or 3 days and why I regale you on regulation in the hospitals. Just let it be said that I'm not a favorite person at the Federal Trade Commission. I generally, because we're a consulting firm, I try to keep some of my most difficult opinions to myself, but this situation got so out of hand that I started writing and speaking about it. I don't think the FTC appreciated that very much. So we have multiple levels of regulation: traditional corporate law, governance, healthcare rules, state not-for-profit and charitable trust laws, multiple IRS regulations related to tax-exempt status. But here's the point that I really want to make here. So the macroeconomic conditions of the American economy, the platform that's under the American economy that really pushes the direction of American healthcare is pushing towards scale and efficiency. We have all these hospitals across the country that are not making money right now. They need to get more efficient, and generally, in order to get more efficient, you have to get bigger. But while that macroeconomic direction is pushing for scale and efficiency, regulatory opposition to that scale and efficiency is coming from both the left of the Democratic Party and the right of the Republican Party. And so we've created a regulatory environment from the FTC, from academics and universities across the country, from the public press, and from the Democratic left and the Republican right. And so the point that I want to make here for you is that the recent healthcare financial results would suggest that the regulatory opposition is winning and hospitals are losing. And should we continue to push in this direction, my prediction would be that the financial results of hospitals, for hospitals and doctors across the United States, will continue to get worse, and it will be more and more difficult for hospitals to figure out how to take care of all of the patients in their community. This is a really very strange situation. It was developing before COVID, but after COVID, just a lot of people in the policy community came really hard at this, and they're making life for running hospitals in our country much more difficult than it needs to be. So what do these wicked problems have in common? First, not-for-profit health system leaders, the most pressing need is to obtain adequate financial results while providing increasingly complex services which communities throughout America demand. And this is getting harder and harder to do not easier to do. Secondly, the gap between what is needed and the revenue to support it is growing wider, which is a really big problem. At some point, this is going to be a collision. And, I know, many of you sort of think, well, what needs to actually happen for people to pay attention to this? And it would probably take a really major, important healthcare organization to go bankrupt to get everybody's attention. Right now, the hospitals that go bankrupt are the little teeny urban hospitals and the little teeny rural hospitals, and nobody really seems to care very much about that situation. They should care, but they don't really. So there's no single source of cost savings or revenue enhancement that comes close to fixing this problem. That's the sort of the magic bullet. There is no magic bullet. Health system leaders have little choice but to find multiple avenues to manage the cost of care, pursue efficiencies through scale and outsourcing. And also, if you notice, for those of you who get Becker's or read Becker's, you'll see that every day there's announcements of layoffs now across hospitals across the country. Hospitals hate to do that. They hate to do it. It sends a message to their community that they don't want to do. But every day now in Becker's, there's an announcement of another hospital conducting layoffs because hospitals just can't hang in there. Chronic underpayment from traditional sources with no relief in sight requires health systems to look for new and innovative sources of revenue. And then all potential solutions must be weighed against the possibility that such solutions can erode a health system and its board ability to execute its duty of care. This is the fiduciary responsibility that all hospitals and boards and managements have to do the very best you possibly can for your community and for the patients who come to see you. And everybody is always worried when the CEO goes to the board and said, here's the 6 things we can do. The first thing that the board is worried about is, will any of those things damage our duty of care and our reputation in the community? And it's not always easy to come to a conclusion about what the answer is to that question. So the reaction to the attempts to solve wicked problems. So during COVID, the media and public showed strong support for America's hospitals to manage what we hope is a once-in-a-lifetime public health crisis. And you'll remember all the pictures in New York City where every night at 6 o'clock people came out and banged on their pans saying thank you very much to all the healthcare workers in New York. Well, that lasted maybe about, an hour and a half. And so now with COVID no longer dominating the headlines, the media and other stakeholders have shifted the efforts of the health systems to solve healthcare's wicked problems. And problems that have been, as I have explained, have been exacerbated by all things pandemic. And we have many stakeholders in healthcare, and they are demanding rapid solutions. And those stakeholders complain loudly if any solution falls short. However, the very actions to solve the wicked problem of healthcare can make aspects of the problem worse, and any one solution will inevitably fall short of a comprehensive fix. And as a result, we have had a media free-for-all challenging the tax-exempt status, financial practices, and market power of America's healthcare system. And just today, there was an article in the New York Times about Allina Healthcare in Minneapolis. Did you all see that? This is the latest in the line. This is the New York Times. It does this about once every 8 weeks now. And this one was, they said that Allina had set up a situation where patients who had chronic bad debt could not be admitted to Allina for certain specialty services. And I will leave it to you as to the wisdom of that decision. Didn't do too well for me. But this is, this is you open yourself to this media free-for-all. And so it's it's become more difficult to make these business decisions because basically the Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, and then a number of the social media, Stat, and that kind of thing are looking over everybody's shoulder to find things that they object to. And we have a constant stream of media attacks on the healthcare system today. So what about leadership in 2023? I know that everybody in this audience has dedicated themselves in their career to solving the wicked problems related to health and healthcare. But hopefully, as I've demonstrated in this talk, the current wicked problems of healthcare are formidable. In the current environment, the solutions are not clear. It's not, you just can't walk into the office every day and say, here's the 5 things I need to do, and if I do these things, everything will get better. And those solutions are not easily tested, and unintended consequences are likely to affect many of your patients, your staff, and other people who care about your organization. And so once these solutions are implemented, they are very hard to undo, which could be a real problem because you could have caused unintended consequences of great significance. So there's no unanimity on what the desired future healthcare state looks like. And I would say, I guess, that is sort of my public policy conclusion for this presentation, given what we're trying to talk about today. So healthcare in America is a continuing wicked problem. And I think, in fact, that the wicked problem is a very good theoretical construct for this presentation. And I think everybody would agree that COVID has made that wicked problem significantly worse. So one of our country's ambitions has to be to solve the wicked problems of healthcare to the best of our collective ability. And we've really got to come together now, as healthcare, as academic medical centers, as community hospitals, as physicians, as state and local governments, as federal governments, as payers, and start finding the conditions that will allow us to deliver the very best care and the most aggressive and best thought out care to the patients who need us every day. Because right now, that confluence of effort and attitude is not there, and we are really feeling it in a way in American healthcare that I don't think we've ever felt it before. And I've been working in this area for almost 50 years now. So I want to finish with 3 quotes that I dug up. First, Atul Gawande, one of my very favorites, Albert Einstein, and Pete Hine. So we always hope for the easy fix, the one simple change that will erase a problem in a stroke. But few things in life work this way. Instead, success requires making 100 small steps go right. One after the other, no slip-ups, no goofs, everyone pitching in. I think that's exactly where we are right now. He didn't write that quote for this moment, but I think that quote does very well for this moment. And then Albert Einstein, we cannot solve our problems with the same level of thinking that created them. Good luck on that one. I'm not exactly sure that I see the American political system moving to the solution of these problems with a better level of thinking. And then Pete Hine, this is the best quote. Problems worthy of attack prove their worth by fighting back. And I would certainly say that is exactly what's happening in the healthcare industry right at the moment. So I want to again thank everybody for inviting me here. I really, this was an incredible honor. I've given, as I said, hundreds and hundreds of speeches, but when the letter came, I was like, oh my goodness, what an incredible honor for me to come and speak and do Dr. John's lecture. Just fabulous. So thank you very much, and I have indeed left time for some questions.
Ken, thank you very much. That was fabulous. And indeed, we have about roughly 9 minutes for some questions. So there's a microphone in front of you, and if you push the little button, it'll turn red, and you can ask your question.
Thank you.
Hi, Kobe. My son is a cardiac anesthesiologist, chief of cardiac anesthesia at Tufts.
You have to push the button again.
They've cut the volume of heart surgery 30% because of lack of nurses. Patients are in the hospital for nursing care, medical advice, but nursing care. Isn't it time to increase the salary of nurses and may decrease the salary of doctors?
Oh my God, I'm not going to answer that. I won't be able to get to the door up there fast enough. Look, this is a pure supply and demand. People are. It's a great question. People are writing PhD theses about this question right now. I guarantee you. And nursing salaries are going to go up because they have to go up. There's not enough nurses, and there's too much demand. So at some point, Adam Smith says that the supply line and demand line come into, they're brought together by the decision on price, and that will bring more nursing. That'll be a more attractive salary, and will bring more nurses into the industry and more train, and then we'll have sufficient volume. The problem is we have no idea how long it's going to take for supply to equal demand. So that's where we are.
And Ken, if I can augment, I don't know if this is on or not.
Yeah,
Just
it
one
is.
quick interesting fact, though. Applications to nursing schools across this country, despite what you have seen, have gone down.
Yeah, how do we justify paying to $10 million a year, along with 15 highly paid lieutenants, while they're claiming that the hospital is losing money?
Oh boy. So, I'm not going to stand here and suggest that all salaries in the administrative suite across hospitals are appropriate. But I think it is fair to say that many healthcare executives are paid appropriately for the difficulty of their job. And that their job from a corporate perspective is as complicated and as difficult as many corporate jobs are demand. And if you're going to try to recruit people who are really up to doing this extraordinarily difficult job right now, then you have to pay them at a market rate in order to attract them. I will not debate with you whether those current salaries are at the market rate or not. Do you want to?
So I don't think any of us in medicine are paid too much, but I look at the healthcare insurance industries and the profits and salaries there, and I'm just wondering, obviously they have wonderful lobbyists and advocates in policy-making places. Do you see any movement on that?
No, I think that actually that will be the last place where, I mean, if you want to put public pressure on salaries across the board, it's much easier to put those pressures on not-for-profit organizations because of the space that they, and the laws that control them. Insurance executives are every year the highest paid executives in the healthcare industry, every year.
Lisa?
Okay, one of these questions, and it may be heretical, is that you said you can't solve the problem with the same mindset that started it. And I think the core mindset driving the American health system is that a market economy can work. It's not really evident that it can or will work as a market economy, and most other industrialized nations don't run it that way.
Yeah, so that's a really actually appropriate and useful comment, and I wouldn't disagree with you. But the problem is that we don't have the political will in this country to change that. So
Maybe it will when enough people get sick and can't get care, and it's affecting the broad middle class.
well, we could go outside and debate what's going to take it to change the political will at the moment. I actually don't see that direction particularly, but look, we have a blue country and we have a red country, And here's my prediction: the blue country will begin to move towards the market, towards the economy, the healthcare economy that you suggest, and the red economy the red part of the country will never move there over their dead bodies. So we could move this conversation right now to Alabama, and you would be just amazed that you would find nobody in Alabama supporting the comment that you just made.
And I'm not amazed at their healthcare staff.
Well, UAB fights back.
So the next question is, this woman here and our...
This is great that you guys are passing the question exam. That's great.
Solution. So my work now is in medical malpractice defense, and we, I think, focus somehow on limiting awards in malpractice cases so that doctors could learn again to talk to patients, do diagnostics, and decide, I really don't need that CAT scan, or could get away with not having an MRI every 3 months, and really save some money on the expense side. Have people not be afraid to practice medicine, that we could cut costs to some extent, and that would be another way of approaching the cost, ratio. We have, for the first time in Massachusetts, had a award that was so big that the doctor's own assets were attached to it, and you can work with that through the court system, but it is a situation where people are really afraid to not sort of do everything. And I think if we could look at it from some kind of tort reform, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, I would. I mean, everybody would love to see that. Have you ever heard the story about CAT scans and appendicitis? That's the story. That's the story of all time that goes to your point. So, talk to an emergency room doctor who's been practicing, say, 25 or 30 years, and he or she will tell you that 20 or 25 years ago, they never did a CAT scan. They were trained in medical school and in residency to know whether it was appendicitis or not, and their miss rate was like that. And so now it's gotten through the mothers of America that if you take your kid into the emergency room, and the emergency room doctor said, I am 99% sure that your son has appendicitis and we should get him into surgery, the ER doctors will tell you that almost immediately the answer is, I want a CAT scan. So you take all the cases of appendicitis that never used to get a CAT scan and now multiply that by, I don't know, 2 million, 3 million, I have no idea. And all those things are getting CAT scans now.
And that's exactly, letting people just do diagnosis.
Exactly.
Sir.
You mentioned about regulation and how it's contributing to the cost of healthcare. Do we have a ball figure what percentage it does contribute? It seems to me during COVID, a lot of those regulations were dropped. Things that in the hospital we couldn't do before, we were doing them, and I'm not sure it really affected outcomes. So do we have a number, and could we look internally, things that we can actually just drop?
I don't know what, see what, the analysis does not go in that direction. And I know you want it to go in that direction, but it doesn't go all the Federal Trade Commission cares about is what they think consolidation in the hospital industry does to prices. And there's been a series of academic research in a number of universities around the country that says when hospitals consolidate, prices go up. But my attitude is like, well, there's like 40 other things going on as well. And are you studying and considering those 40 other things? And prices go up over what period of time? And how else are you going to reduce expenses? And how would you go about reducing business service expenses, which contribute to the total cost of healthcare and which individual small unit hospitals can't do anything about? So we have this enormous difference of opinion of what we're measuring and what we're trying to accomplish.
Sir.
Are you aware of any institutions that seem to be doing better, and can they help guide us to some solutions for this?
There are a handful of organizations that have come through COVID, pretty well from a financial perspective. One organization that continues to perform quite well is Baylor down in Dallas, Texas. But it takes a business orientation, and they've been working hard on their business orientation, and they also are in a growth market, and that growth market helps them from an economic perspective. So, when you're not hunting for patients, you can find a way, to financially operate in a better place. But even a lot of organizations that have traditionally done well did very poorly during COVID and very poorly coming out of COVID, and they're not doing very much better right now.
Can hospital systems that assume risk and insurance risk save money by not having the money siphoned off by the insurance companies?
Well, I think so. So it's been a mixed bag. It's been a mixed bag. There are hospitals around the country that have that are fully integrated, and they have their own insurance plans. Presbyterian in Albuquerque is a really good example of that. Their insurance plan is actually larger than their delivery system right now. So in terms of the total revenue at Presbyterian, there's more revenue from the managed care program than there is from the delivery system. But many other hospitals have had a really difficult time standing up that kind of integrated program, and so many organizations have done that, and then they've turned around and sold those programs or have had to close it down. So the jury is really out on whether that is a necessary and sufficient solution, but I think you'll see, as you see more consolidation and things coming together, I think you will see hospital systems come together and that they bring along a strong insurance component as well. I think that's pretty inevitable.
It has generally worked for us. I won't get into the details of it, but for Hopkins, we have 4 insurance companies, and it's generally worked for us. Ma'am.
What are your thoughts about increasing the revenue side of things by experimenting with a tax increase in a certain area of the country or a certain hospital system? And I'm specifically thinking about a small sales tax increase that's basically going to hit everybody. Now, I know that you have to generate the political will to get that done, but that might be a way to begin to increase the revenues and to spread some of the pain that's associated with the increasing the revenue side.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting suggestion. I think the issue with that is by and large the political will from the political subdivisions is not there for that, and in addition, I think that many hospitals are very reluctant to go in that direction, because once you buy into the money, you buy into the control and influence, and I think that really worries many hospital organizations across the United States.
Do you have issues with trying to develop the political will to get a tax increase? Do you foresee problems with developing a grassroots organizational structure that's made up of the population that needs the health care?
Yeah, I don't see that developing. I don't see the political will there. I don't see the political will to do that, and I don't think doctors and hospitals are popular enough right now to see that people really want to take that step forward.
I'm sorry, everyone. We have run out of time. So, Ken, thank you. Clearly, you had a great influence on the audience. It was a wonderful.
This was a wonderful question and answer.
It was fabulous. So, ladies and gentlemen, one more time for Mr. Ken Kaufman.